Here we go. Here we go. Turn down for what? Great. Awesome. Going good there. And here we go.
Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Welcome back, guys. Welcome all. Happy Tuesday. We have interesting stories tonight. So shout out to everyone watching on Rockfin, YouTube, and Politics TV. And I will tell you guys about that probably tomorrow. There was a bug over there earlier today. So hopefully that is going well now. But I'll tell you guys about that later on at another time. But welcome, guys. We are going to get into it tonight. There's so much to discuss. There's been a lot of news stories this week. Honestly, yesterday, I felt like I was in an episode of Law and Order. Don't. Want to say hello to people in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and get started. What's going on? Notori said, I said he is guilty, but I wish you had an option to say both. I am starring your comment, Notori, because you mentioned something that we're going to come back to it. I don't want to give it away, but I'm starring your comment. Shout out to Rulin said, for sure, I'd go A plus B. Rulin too. Bad cookies. I voted not sure, as I only heard about this an hour ago and don't know much of the details. I love your honesty there, Bad Cookies. Shout out to Mastermind. I voted not sure because he can help President Camacho. Greetings, Lloyd says, wonder what could have happened if the roles were reversed in the Penny case. We'll get into that. Shout out to Sam says A plus B for sure. Greetings, Gup says, it's always about the wealthy enriching themselves. MEP Claire Daly speech from, May 10th, 2023 on YouTube. Shout out to Hannah says Elon is a target. Greetings, Angela, who's a Sabby member, says greetings and happy Tuesday, Sabby and Sabby chat. Had to vote not sure on this one, but notice that the poll itself was pretty neck and neck. Let's see if it remains the same. I noticed it was very close. Shout out to Gup says avoid the Christmas rush and like the stream now. That's right. Go ahead and hit that like button for me, guys. That helps me with the algo. Greetings, FWC. Guilty of what? He wasn't arrested. He was subpoenaed. LOL. We'll get into that as well. What's going on? 3 of 8. I've tuned out of Elon news. Just doesn't interest me. He's too hyped up. Shout out to Larez says, Ni hao my Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Help Sabby by watching the ads and hitting the like. Great show the other day. Yeah, can't support RFK Jr. if he runs as a Dem. Very telling he didn't seek justice for Dad and JFK. Interesting. What's going on? Sebastian says, as Mariah Carey once said, I don't know her. My reaction towards Elon Musk. That's a good one. Greetings, ACAB. I voted not sure. Wouldn't be surprised if he is. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a setup either. I haven't heard specific allegations like we have about others like Prince Andrew. That's true. Greetings, Robin says, all right, let's do this. Shout out to Robert says, I voted not sure because I don't care. Ni hao, konnichiwa. Greetings, Chicago. Sabby, I love you. We are allies for life, but the next 2 weeks, you and me, not friends. Hashtag heat in 6. You know, this is a rematch, Chicago. This is a rematch. And I'm seriously hoping Celtics are going to beat you guys this time. I'm hoping so. Shout out to Steve says, hey, everybody. Greetings, Bryce. Uh-oh, Bryce. There you go. Bryce says, hello to Soul. Shout out to Soul says, hello to Lawrence. Interesting. What's going on? Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Tuesday, peeps. Shout out to Wary, who says hello to pretty much everybody. Pretty much everyone. Greetings, Old Man Barker says, idiocracy. Shout out to Lord Nagatron. Big hello from Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks. You guys remember that show? That song was from the Drew Carey show. What's going on, Gamer says hello. Shout out to Casey says, hey, Gamer. Greetings, Pachico, who's a Sabby member, says hello to Wary. What's going on, Black Zen? I'm voting. Who cares? He's just another rich guy. Shout out to Mika, who says hello to Lawrence and Wary. And what's going on, whoever says, what up, comrades? Okay, let's go ahead and get started because we are going to do call in tonight. I'm sure you guys will have a lot to say after you hear tonight's stories. So let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're really holding down the forts over here. Thank you guys so much to all of you that are Sabby patrons. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I'd love to get a new shout out. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Adrian Stearns. Oh, Adrian, come out and play. It's a song from Jewel. I know some of you are like, what the hell is she talking about? Adrian! And that's from Rocky. All right, let's go ahead and show that thumbnail. So we'll show you what we're going to discuss tonight. Excited about this one. So here we go. Let's dive in. Tonight, we are discussing Russell Brand and RFK Jr. reveal. There are some revealing moments there, and that's not the only clip we're going to show. There's another one that I saw this morning, thanks to you guys for sending it to me. I think some of these questions that you've had about what RFK Jr. is going to do in the end have been answered. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Elon Musk is subpoenaed. Oh boy. And what does this have to do with Jeffrey Epstein? Yes, I told you more names will be revealed. But in this situation, it may not be exactly what you think, but still, they say that he's involved. We're also going to discuss Khanna is in the hot seat. We're going to break down that interview that Khanna had recently where he is questioned about some things, some things. And last but not least, we are going to discuss Daniel Penny is arrested. I'm going to tell you where that stands today and what people are trying to do to support him. This is crazy. It's crazy stuff. But let's go ahead and get started with our first story, which is this issue here with Daniel Penny. So for those who are not aware, there was a gentleman on the subway named Jordan Neely. Daniel Penny and a couple of others felt like he was being irate. They say that they felt threatened in some way, shape, or form. Daniel Penny chose to put Jordan Neely in a chokehold. There were 3 other men that were standing around Daniel, assisting to kind of keep Jordan down so that he would not move. And Jordan Neely died because of that chokehold. Well, Daniel Neely turned himself in. So I want to be clear. It's not like they, went to look for him. He turned himself in to authorities. And I want to go ahead and get into that.
Here in New York, the subway rider who put a homeless man in a fatal chokehold is free on bail tonight after being arrested on a manslaughter charge. Stephanie Gosk has late details.
So I'm going to pause there. Notice that he said he is now free. Let's go on.
Protests and calls for criminal charges were answered. Daniel Penny was arrested for killing Jordan Neely. Early this morning, the 24-year-old walked into Manhattan's 5th Precinct.
He did so voluntarily and with the sort of dignity and integrity that is characteristic of his history of service to this grateful nation.
The former Marine is accused of manslaughter in the 2nd degree, a charge carrying a maximum 15-year sentence. Penny was released on $100,000 bail. Homeless and battling mental illness, Neely died after Penny put him in a chokehold on the subway nearly 2 weeks ago.
We just want to pause here because I want to go back because I just want to show you that obviously it was more than one person. You can see here that he did have some assistance. There were other gentlemen that were on the subway that were trying to hold Jordan Neely down. I don't know if those gentlemen will be asked to come in or to give a statement. I do not know. Right now, Daniel Penny was the only one who turned himself in. But as they just told you, he is now free on bail.
Cold on the subway nearly 2 weeks ago. A witness said Neely got on the train and started yelling that he was hungry and ready to die. According to Penny's attorney, Neely aggressively threatened his client and other people on the train, adding that he is confident that once all the facts and circumstances surrounding this tragic incident are brought to bear, Mr. Penny will be fully absolved of any wrongdoing.
Something that I've noticed with this story is that they continue to say that he threatened other people on the train, but they don't seem to tell you what he did that was threatening or what he said to other passengers on the subway that was threatening. They just say that he threatened other passengers on the train. So I'm sure more of that will come out in the court appearance, but I don't know. That's kind of weird to me that they're not stating that. Like, what was it that he actually said other than that he's hungry and he's ready to die?
But lawyers for Neely's family say Penny is guilty, and they aren't happy with the charge.
Yes, we disagree with the manslaughter charge. We think it should be murder because he knew it would happen. He knew he would die.
What is the difference between the manslaughter charge and a murder charge?
A murder charge is a specific intent crime. It means that you intended to kill someone. This manslaughter charge under New York law is about recklessness. It's about the conscious disregard of a known risk.
Penny's case will likely come down to a question of self-defense. New Yorkers are split, some calling him a heartless vigilante. Others say he is a hero. Either way, many agree record homelessness and a mental health crisis led to tragedy on the subway.
Now, I want to just say something about the way they are framing this incident. Notice how she said some are saying that he is a hero and some are calling him a vigilante. Why would there be that confusion? I honestly think part of the reason why there is that confusion is because the media is not telling us the whole story. We have seen this happen before, and I'll give you an example with the incident with Michael Brown. If you remember Michael Brown, he was the teenage boy that had his hands up and the police officer killed him, shot and killed him, left his body laying in the street. The media, even at that point in time, didn't tell us the entire story. Now, it was only later on, after a protest, that the mainstream media, they interviewed the officer who shot Michael Brown, and the officer's account of the story was that Michael Brown reached for his gun. Now, that doesn't mean that was a reason for him to kill Michael Brown. But I also think it was pretty negligent of mainstream media to leave that particular piece of information out. And I want to prepare you because I have a feeling that this case is going to be similar in the way that they are not giving us key details about what happened on that subway. So don't be surprised if we have protests and more protests. There were some in New York, but if we have more protests and then it is revealed, oh, by the way, something else happened that mainstream media didn't mention. Still, to me, does not give him the reason to kill this guy. or to put him in the chokehold. And these other gentlemen helping him too. But I want you to pay attention to the way that mainstream media, they do this on purpose, by the way. This is to get ratings and to rile up the people. So you'll keep coming back for more information about the story. Notice the way the mainstream media chooses to frame the narrative and how they choose to leave key pieces of information out. If you tell me that someone got onto the subway and they threatened the passengers, you need to tell me what they did that was so threatening. And I don't see them doing that.
Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
Okay. Now, he is being charged with manslaughter, and I want to talk about this. I've talked about it before on the show, but I want to be very clear when we mention manslaughter, right? So they told you this is not murder. Manslaughter can happen if the actions that you took caused the death of someone, but you did not intend to kill them. But there was a question that I had, and you can let me know how you feel about this. Daniel Penny was a former Marine. And as someone who grew up in a military family, one of the things that I learned when I was younger is that Marines are trained to kill with their bare hands, right? This is not a one-off. They are trained to do that. Since Daniel Penny used his hands, put him in a chokehold, and that killed Jordan Neely, could we say that his hands are technically a deadly weapon? Let's see what Cornell Law says about this. This is really interesting. A deadly weapon. A deadly weapon is an object, instrument, substance, or device which is intended to be used in a way that is likely to cause death, or which death can easily and readily be produced. A deadly weapon, this is the part that's important. I'm going to highlight this here because people may not be aware of this. I know about this because I took martial arts. A deadly weapon need not be a weapon in the traditional sense. For example, in Assers versus United States Supreme Court, acknowledged that a large rock could be considered a deadly weapon when used by a defendant to strike the victim in the head, fracturing his skull. Some jurisdictions allow even more flexibility in the definition of a deadly weapon. For example, let me make this larger so you guys can see this. And I'm not a lawyer, but I just we're going to go through what Cornell Law is saying here. For example, Texas court held in Stenol versus the state that a floor could be considered a deadly weapon when the defendant slammed the victim's head down upon it, and held in Turner versus state that hands and fists could be considered deadly weapons under certain circumstances. So this was the question that I had. Former Marine, trained to kill with his bare hands, used that and killed Jordan Neely, whether he intended to or not. Could they say that his hands are technically a deadly weapon? I want you to think about that, and we can talk about that more tonight on Call In. Now, let's go back into this manslaughter charge, because I want us to take a look at why they charged him with manslaughter and not with murder. What is manslaughter and why Daniel Penny charged with it in Jordan Neely's death? Experts explain. Let's go down here. Why second-degree manslaughter? I think this charge makes a lot of sense from a charging standpoint. The DA would have three options. You have the basic murder charge. You have manslaughter. You have criminally negligent homicide. Now, we don't know what the grand jury is going to decide. This is just the initial charge for the arraignment. But the reason why this manslaughter charge was brought forward is because it's based on a recklessness standard. Was there a reckless and unjustifiable risk to human life? And that's going to be the question for the jury. So when you think about this incident that happened on the subway and you say this is messed up, that they're charging him with manslaughter and not murder, I want to explain to you why that is. I don't want you to just say, oh, they're giving him a lesser charge or for whatever reason. I want you to understand there's a difference between recklessness and intent. So if you intentionally seek out to kill someone, that's murder. If you happen to kill someone and you were not intending to, but they ended up dying because of your actions, that is considered manslaughter. And let's go to this piece here. What is the difference between it and first-degree manslaughter? Remember, he's charged with second degree. First-degree manslaughter is an intentional act where a homicide occurs. The second degree is based on this recklessness standard. Was there an unjustifiable risk taken in this particular case? Was the chokehold a reckless act where the defendant didn't intend to kill Mr. Neely, but a death did occur by this reckless act? And that's what the jury is going to have to tackle when they are looking at this. With a murder charge, we're looking at intentional acts. There was an intent to cause death, or that someone acted with depraved indifference. The big difference here is that the prosecutor has decided that there was not an intent to cause death, but that Mr. Penny was aware of and disregarded the risk of the death. What is the sentence for second-degree manslaughter? For a first-time felony offender, in this case, it would be 15 years in prison. So I wanted to break that down to you because, again, this is not how I feel about this particular issue. This is what the law says. So just keep that in mind. So it seems like to me, from what I've been hearing from people, a lot of people have a problem with the law. Not just this particular case, but the law. Cornell law also tells us when we talk about manslaughter, manslaughter is the unlawful killing of a human being without malice. It is of two kinds: voluntary, upon a sudden quarrel or heat of passion; involuntary, in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to a felony, or in the commission in an unlawful manner, or without due caution or circumspection of a lawful act which might produce death. So I want to give you an example that happened here in Massachusetts. A couple of years ago, there was a teenage boy. I think he had just turned 18. He was leaving work, worked at the grocery store in Haverhill. He was leaving work, got into his car. While he was driving home, his phone rang. He looked down at his phone. Actually, it was a text message. He got a text message. He looked down at his phone. In that split second, when he looked down at his phone, he actually hit the car in front of him. That car ran off the road and the people in the car died. Now, some people in Massachusetts felt like it was unfair to charge him with manslaughter, but they did. And the reason that they were able to give is that we realize he did not have the intent of killing those passengers that were the vehicle in front of him, but he was negligent because he chose to look down at his phone at a text message, which in Massachusetts, you were not supposed to do. No texting and driving. Because of his reckless behavior, that is what led to the accident. And the accident is what caused the death of the passengers in the vehicle in front of him. He was found guilty. 18 years old. That was a big story here because people are like, oh my God, this kid just lost his whole life because he made one mistake. But you have to understand, that's all it takes sometimes. That's all it takes. And they were able to argue that it was recklessness. So we don't know what's going to happen with this particular case. We don't know how the jury is going to look at it. But what I do know is that Eric Adams was recently, questioned about this incident in the subway. Now, Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City, and I want to show you his response to this as well.
I wanted to go back to your remarks on Jordan Neely's killing. I know you focused a lot on his mental health challenges and some of the services, but it was ultimately a chokehold that killed him, a chokehold from another strap hanger. Mm-hmm. Do you think Daniel Penny, who I know you didn't mention in yesterday's speech, you didn't mention how he died or whose hands he died as the cause of. Do you think that that was an appropriate reaction from a fellow strap hanger to someone who didn't seem to have a weapon to someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis on a subway car?
Okay, so she is asking Mayor Adams, the reporter, you can't see her, but the reporter is asking Mayor Adams, do you think that Daniel Penny's response to Jordan Neely was justified, considering the fact that he did not have a weapon and he was also going through a mental health crisis? Listen to what Eric Adams says.
You know, I think it's important not to interfere as the mayor of the city in those parts that the police department has yet to take their action. The police
No. Let me tell you why Eric Adams is wrong here. As the mayor, you actually have authority over the police department. This was something that people came after Pete Buttigieg about when he chose to fire one of the police officers in his department. This is back when he was still mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He chose to demote and remove the Black police officer who reported the racial incidents that were happening in the police department instead of the police officers that were actually using racial slurs. He chose to target the Black police officer. There were many situations that happened with South Bend police force right around the time when Pete was running for president. There were many of them, and a lot of people didn't know about this, that Black people in South Bend, Indiana, were not happy with the way that Mayor Pete was handling the police department. If you remember, on the debate stage for the Democrat primaries, it was Eric, I think his last name is Swalwell. Yes, Eric, who was also running for president in the Democratic primary. What did he say to Pete Buttigieg? He said, "You're the mayor, do something. You can fire the police chief." That is actually true. So for Eric Adams to say here, well, it's not really my place to, comment on these situations before the police department. No, you are the mayor. You are actually higher than the police department, and you do have authority over the police department. Eric Adams doesn't want to sell out his friends. Because remember, Eric Adams is a former police officer. You got to remember that. He was a part of NYPD. So he's not going to sell out his friends. Even though he's no longer a cop, there's still like that back the blue code that a lot of people still hold, even after they have retired from being a police officer. That's what this is about. Cop out from him. Let's rewind it back a little bit here.
important not to interfere as the mayor of the city in those parts that the police department has yet to take their action. The police respond to me. And I don't want, if this case goes to trial or anywhere further, I don't want someone to talk about changing venues, that the mayor tainted when the police falls under one of his agencies. I dealt with the things that are within my span of control that I've been advocating for from the day one that I got in office. And the DA will make the determination on how to handle this case. And I respect that. I respect DA Bragg's, his job and what he has to do. I need to prevent. And let's be clear, let's be honest. There are more Jordans out there. I said this over and over again. I see them. I talk to them. I interact with them. And so we need to make sure we prevent these things from happening.
So if Eric Adams realizes there are more Jordans out there, and he goes on to say that we need to prevent these things from happening, then shouldn't his answer to the question to the reporter be, no, I do not think it was an appropriate response what Daniel Penny did? Shouldn't that be his response? But he doesn't want to say that. He doesn't want to be held accountable. He doesn't want to look bad to the NYPD. That's what this is really about. So you realize there's more Jordans out there. So you also realize that there must be more Daniel Pennies out there, which means that this could happen again, Mayor Adams. The reporter asked him that question because she is looking to see where he stands on this particular issue because he is the mayor of New York City. And however the mayor feels about how you can and cannot act towards these types of situations, that can actually hold some weight. Aye.
That is within my span of control.
Mr. Mayor, one more.
What do you want to know me?
The police department's old patrol guide bans the use of chokeholds. Is a chokehold ever appropriate?
Where if the police department bans it, then the police officers must follow that rule. So I cannot be hypothetical on when it's appropriate or not. I know it's banned in the police department, and the police department follows that rule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So it's banned in the police department, and the police department follows that rule. But at the same time, he doesn't want to tell you whether or not other people should be able to do it. That was not the proper response to that question. He just didn't want to give a yes or a no. He didn't want to be on record. And he didn't want to go against the NYPD. Now, this is really interesting because there is something else happening here. I don't know if you're aware of this, but shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. But Mayor Adams apparently is not looking too good in reference to the Biden administration. And I believe that has everything to do with the police situation in New York City and the way that the NYPD have been treating people in New York City, but also because Eric Adams backed funding the police more, and the crime issue has not been resolved, and more protests have come about. Shout out to Case Study QB. Listen to this. There's something else that's brewing here with Eric Adams and the Biden administration.
So a couple of weeks we were talking about how Biden's re-election campaign was off to a relatively slow start. Now Axios has some previously unreported stories about some drama that's been happening behind the scenes. New York City Mayor Eric Adams was quietly removed from Biden's re-election campaign advisory.
You see this? Scoop. Inside the Biden split with New York Mayor Eric Adams. Now, why would they want to remove Eric Adams from the Biden campaign?
Removed from Biden's re-election campaign advisory board. This was announced in the opening weeks of the campaign with other Democratic Party figures like Senator Elizabeth Warren and others. But it's reflective of this really kind of fraught relationship between the president and arguably the highest profile black mayor in the country over issues like immigration and crime that the Democrats clearly need to be united on, not just heading into 2024, but as a party, as cities like New York and others are dealing with these in ways that the president might not understand. You'll remember in April, Mayor Adams publicly criticized the White House and said that they're ruining and putting the city in jeopardization because of the way that these immigrants have been showing up, because of the way that they've been lacking financial resources or imminent even strategy support from the White House, they say, in these cities. And so we're going to look for how that relationship will not only continue to deteriorate, but whether other Democratic mayors start to come out and say, look, we need more from you guys as this situation is happening.
On Adams, he's made no secret that he sees himself as potentially a White House contender someday. But it is interesting how you mentioned other big city mayors. First of all, if they
Eric Adams is president,
do ramp up pressure on the president, but also we've seen a real trend of like real progressives win. We just saw in Chicago, there's a mayoral primary in Philadelphia today, that Adams, he's not as left as they are, and we'll be interested to see if he faces perhaps a primary challenge when he runs for re-election.
He's not as left as they are. Eric Adams is not left at all. He is a status quo Democrat. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just be real. Now, they mentioned immigration. I don't think that's really what it's about. I think it's about policing. I think that's more what this is about in reference to Eric Adams. So he's already not looking too good with the Biden administration. And I'm pretty sure this incident that has happened on the subway with Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely also does not make him look good in the Biden administration's eyes either. So there could be a couple of things going on there, but it doesn't look good for Eric Adams. And we're going to be following this case to see how things go from here. But I wanted people to fully understand the difference between manslaughter and between murder, because people have already reached out to me and said, why is he charged with manslaughter and not murder? And they are two different things. So I wanted to break that down. But I will say, It sounds like to me that most of you that reached out disagree with the law. And that's something I think that should be revisited at some point. I'm gonna go to some of the comments here and then we'll go to the next story. Oops, sorry, Tori. Black Zen, I'm a former Marine and I can attest to having martial knowledge. Yes. So that's another thing. Like when I said Marines are trained to kill with their hands, it's a form of martial arts. Like I know I took martial arts for a little bit when I was in middle school. And I know one of the things that our sensei taught us is that we're not supposed to practice it in the street. Like it's only meant for like when we would come into our martial arts class, like it was only meant for that. Or if we had a tournament, but we were not supposed to be Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan and just start, busting people up in the street. Like we couldn't do what you see in the movies. We were trained not to do that. You're not supposed to do that. Mr. Baruch says he supported the white supremacist cop system. Yep. Ryan says the NYPD is a domestic military force used to antagonize the proletariat of the highest population density city in the nation. Yeah, does not surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then we'll go to the Elon Musk story. All right. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin. I can only see the bottom half of this, I think. Okay. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. What mainstream media is pushing shouldn't be about the killing itself, but why Jordan was homeless and his mental health. Adams did try and pivot towards mental health care. However, if you won't vocally say and push for the New York Health Act and outlaw private equity from owning housing. Sab, I find more interesting stuff about you every day. What martial arts you took? Yeah, I took martial arts in middle school. I didn't finish. It's not like I became a black belt or anything. It was just an extracurricular activity that I did. It was actually my friend's dad was a sensei. So that was something that he did on the side besides like being in the military. He was a soldier, but he was also a sensei. So he used to teach his classes as well. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun time. But like I said, I learned we could not be Bruce Lee. Anywho, moving on to the next story here. Elon Musk, this news broke yesterday. Literally, as I think I was just getting back from like exercising or something, but I saw it come across my way on my Google card on my phone that Elon Musk has been subpoenaed in reference to Jeffrey Epstein and this case with JP Morgan. Now, if you have not been watching from the get-go, we've been covering this from the very beginning. So let's go back. It was discovered that JP Morgan knowingly funded these sexual activities. I gotta be careful what I say on YouTube. At Jeffrey Epstein's private island in the Virgin Islands. So that story broke. There were a couple other things that came out that delegate Stacey Plaskett had taken money from Jeffrey Epstein. And she said she didn't want to give the money back. Like she took money from him after he was convicted. There have been more names that have been released of people who had business dealings with Epstein and actually met with him after he was convicted. Noam Chomsky was one of those individuals. And there were other subpoenas that came forward. One was for Jamie Dimon. Jamie's connected to JP Morgan, so that's him. And then it was also the two co-founders of Google were also subpoenaed. So that was Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Now, something crazy happened with that. Larry Page apparently disappeared. I covered that story as well. I still am waiting to hear if they found Larry. So far, I have not heard that they have, but he seemed to have disappeared after it was announced that he was going to be subpoenaed. So they aren't able to track him. We don't know if he is hiding on his own or if someone hid Larry for them. We don't know. We don't know if someone got to Larry or Larry took off. So there was that incident as well. More names have come forward. Like I said, other people that met with him after he was convicted. And now, Twitter's own Elon Musk is one of the names that is mentioned in reference to being subpoenaed to this case with JP Morgan and their connection to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm telling you guys, I really do believe this year is going to be the year where more corruption is revealed. I told you more names are going to come forward. Now, this is not to say that Elon Musk was on that island. We don't know. But here's what we do know. Let's go ahead and share this clip here.
But a big headline crossing just hours ago. Elon Musk has been issued a subpoena by the U.S. Virgin Islands, all tied to the territory's JP Morgan Jeffrey Epstein lawsuit. Eamon Javers is back with the latest on that. Eamon.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. As you say, Elon Musk's name has now been connected to the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein for the first time today, as a new court filing revealed that a subpoena has been issued to the Tesla CEO. Now, the subpoena comes in the ongoing U.S. Virgin Islands lawsuit against JP Morgan, which alleges that the bank allegedly turned a blind eye to Epstein's sex crimes because of his enormous wealth and referral network of ultra high net worth men.
Just want to reiterate there for those who had not been following this from the beginning, they are saying that JP Morgan knowingly knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing on that island, and that includes when they gave him the funds to keep it going. That is what they are claiming.
In the filing, attorneys for the USVI write, upon information and belief, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla Inc., among other companies, is a high net worth individual who Epstein may have referred or attempted to refer to JP Morgan. But the filing also says the USVI hired a private investigator to track down Elon Musk and serve him with the subpoena, and that effort has not been successful.
That does not make any sense. You mean to tell me the guy who owns Twitter, which now he's handing it over to someone else in the next couple of weeks, but we already discussed that. The guy who owns Twitter, the guy who was hosting all of these Twitter spaces the past couple of weeks, the same gentleman who had an interview with the BBC, the same gentleman who has been on multiple shows, actually, even if it's just for a brief appearance in the past couple of weeks, the same gentleman who has been promoting and talking about the Twitter files, the same gentleman that Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger had to go to Congress to testify in reference to the project that he assigned them to do, the same gentleman whose private jet was tracked by other journalists, and he discussed this in a Twitter space meeting. You mean to tell me they couldn't find him? How is that possible? How is that possible? It's not possible. I'm here to tell you, cut the crap. Cut the crap. Elon Musk is not someone that has been difficult to find these past couple of weeks, especially ever since he took over Twitter. So you mean to tell me a couple of journalists from different newspapers could track his private jet, but you can't find him to hand over papers to subpoena him to go to court? Do you really believe this? Because I don't. I don't buy it at all. It's not like he's been hiding. He's been very public. He's been very out in the open. So I have difficulty believing that. Now all of a sudden you can't find Elon and he's been everywhere the past couple of weeks. Give me a break.
USVI wants the court to authorize alternative service methods to get the subpoena to Musk because deadlines in the case are looming. So, Brian, all of this comes ahead of the deposition of JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. That's expected in New York on May 26. And the question there will be, what involvement, if any, did Dimon personally have in the decision to keep Epstein as a client of the bank despite his sordid track record? All of that still to come, Brian. So this case sort of in the middle of the process, if you will, but we're learning some of these new names as we go along. Back over to you.
You know, I could understand if they said they were trying to find who's someone we haven't seen in a long time. I don't know. I could understand if they said they were trying to find like MC Hammer or something. You know, we haven't seen MC Hammer in the public eye in a long time. But we have seen Elon Musk in the public eye for the past couple of weeks. And you can't find him. He works at Twitter. They have a headquarters building. Yes. In San Francisco, he has employees, yes, and you can't find him? Now, there's more here in this article from the Wall Street Journal. I want to get into the thick of it. Elon Musk issued subpoena in lawsuit over JP Morgan ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Dun, 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 dun. It's all coming out. Elon Musk is being asked to turn over documents as part of a civil lawsuit by the U.S. Virgin Islands against JP Morgan over the bank's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, according to court documents filed Monday. See, they're asking him for documents. The U.S. Virgin Islands said it wants information from Mr. Musk because it believes the Tesla chief executive is a high net worth individual who Epstein may have referred or attempted to refer to JP Morgan, which would mean also that Elon Musk, in some way, shape, or form, had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this shouldn't be surprising. A lot of these billionaires, they hang out together. I've seen pictures online of Elon Musk with Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's go on. I love how you guys are talking about MC Hammer in the chat. That's really funny. Lawyers in the case issued a subpoena for documents to Mr. Musk on April 28th, but they have been unable to physically serve him with the court papers, according to Monday's filing. So the lawyers are seeking a judge's approval to issue the subpoena to Mr. Musk by email, the filing states. In a tweet, Mr. Musk called the subpoena idiotic on so many levels and said that Epstein never advised him. The notion that I would need or listen to financial advice from a dumb crook is absurd. But you knew him. It's easy to call him a dumb crook now because he's dead and he was found guilty of sexual abuse. But did you think that he was a dumb crook when you were hanging out with him? Let's go on. Mr. Musk also said Tesla had a dispute with JP Morgan a decade ago and withdrew his business from the bank. I have never forgiven them, he said. Spokeswomen from the Virgin Islands and JP Morgan declined to comment. Why? Why would they decline to comment? It is unclear how much business Mr. Musk would have done with JP Morgan. He currently has a contentious relationship with the bank, and his companies have largely relied on other banks. Epstein, who had a residence in the U.S. Virgin Islands, banked with JP Morgan for a number of years until it closed its accounts in 2013. Though bankers continued meeting with him years later, the Journal has reported. Epstein died in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. The U.S. Virgin Islands sued JP Morgan late last year in a Manhattan federal court, saying the bank facilitated Epstein's alleged sex trafficking and abuse by allowing the late by allowing the late financier to remain a client and helping him send money to his victims. And this is the big one here in reference to JP Morgan. Again, the courts are saying that they knew. The civil lawsuit alleges that JP Morgan received referrals of high-value business opportunities from Epstein and turned a blind eye to his activities. The bank has said it didn't know about Epstein's alleged crimes and can't be held liable. In March, the U.S. Virgin Islands issued subpoenas to other billionaires. This is what I was telling you about earlier, including Google co-founder Sergey Brin, to gather information for its civil lawsuit. In civil cases, lawyers can use subpoenas during the discovery process to get information from people who aren't a party to a lawsuit. But that could provide evidence related to the case. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon is scheduled to be deposed as part of the case. Lawyers had already questioned several JP Morgan employees in this case, and one filed by an unnamed woman who accused Epstein of sexual abuse. The cases are running concurrently in Manhattan federal court. So It does not look too good. It just does not look too good. Now, there's a poll question attached to the live chat. In that question, I'm asking you, do you think that Elon Musk is guilty? Do you think that Elon Musk is being targeted because of his release of the Twitter files and his push for free speech? Or are you not sure? Now, I'm going to reveal those results at the end of the show, but there is a reason why there is one option that is not included. And Notori hit the nail on the head. Unfortunately, I think I unstarred your comment, Notori, and I'm so sorry. But Notori hit the nail on the head because Notori was asking, why not both? And I think that is a really good question. Now, I didn't put that as an option on the poll on purpose. This was kind of a trick question. Sorry, guys. The reason why I didn't put both as an option on the poll is because I wanted to see if you were going to mention in the chat whether it could be both. And you guys did. And that's a good sign. You know why? Because that shows that you are critical thinkers. That's why I didn't put it there. I wanted to see if you guys were going to say, well, wait a minute, why can't it be both? And it can be both. Here's the thing. It could be true that Elon Musk had this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and that, yes, he was advised in reference to JP Morgan. That could be true. But it could also be true that Elon Musk is being targeted because of his release of the Twitter files and the information that was released with those files about federal agencies and the censorship and about politicians and about Hunter Biden. It could be that he's also targeted because he released information that the federal government did not want to get out. Here's the critical thinking piece. Two things can be true at the same time. Sometimes it isn't a yes or a no. Sometimes it's not right or wrong. Sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. And sometimes two things can be true at the same time. If Elon Musk did not come forward about the Twitter files, would he have been targeted in a sense in reference to this particular situation? Maybe, maybe not. Could it just be that they're digging into this Epstein case as much as possible and they'd stumbled upon his name? Could be. But it could also be that his involvement with the Twitter files kind of gave them that extra push that they needed to maybe look for a little bit more information about Elon than they planned on doing. And this is how I want you to think about things. Because sometimes it's not one or the other. Sometimes it's both. We may never know. We may never know. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? The world may never know. So this is a way to think. This is how I want to start thinking about things. Like sometimes it's not one way or the other. But we'll reveal the results at the end because I am still curious. So we're going to move on to the next story after these comments. Peter says maybe he's hanging out with Bigfoot. We can't find that mofo either. What's up, Oz says Twitter targeting. Ashura said, I asked the same thing. That's right. That's right. That's right. Could be both. Okay. This next story that we're getting into is about Khanna. I'm sorry. I know you guys don't really care for his voice, but Khanna had an interview recently where he's questioned about a couple of things. One of them is immigration, and the other one is about President Biden not showing up in New Hampshire. You might actually like his response to one of these and not the other, but I'm going to point out some of the flaws in this interview that I think people need to pay attention to. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip, and let's dive in.
Yes, and blessings to them. Okay, let's start with the border. This week marked the highest recorded number of people showing up illegally at the border. By the end of the week, it was 82,000 people recorded so far. National Review points the finger at your party, saying this: Democrats made this mess themselves. They dismantled the policies that the Trump administration had used to get a handle on the problem. At the border this week, Senator Ted Cruz said this:
I have to say I am angry, because this is deliberate. This is a decision that was made by President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and congressional Democrats to open up the border to what is nothing less than an invasion.
So President
open up the border. Let's talk about this piece for a second. If I remember correctly, Joe Biden, the Biden administration actually were adding on to Trump's border wall. This was a question that was asked to the White House press secretary, Karine. They did ask her, how do you feel about Joe Biden adding on to Trump's border wall? And she didn't want to answer the question. So it's really interesting, like how short memories people have these days, how Ted Cruz can stand there in front of a crowd of people and tell them that they opened up the borders just to let people come through and totally omit the fact that the Biden administration has been adding on to the Trump border wall, totally omitting the fact that kids are still in cages under the Biden administration. And for all those progressive politicians who tend to cry or said, oh my God, those poor kids in the cages during the Trump administration, they have been silent about the kids in the cages under the Biden administration. And this is something you cannot overlook. So again, this goes back to the media and the politicians who go along with the State Department talking points. Notice how they omit certain facts that the American people need to be aware of.
Biden did get rid of Trump-era policies that he called inhumane. You heard what Congressman Donald said, that that's an easy way to label things that were actually working in his estimation. But nothing got done in this administration, the first couple of years of Democrats controlling the White House and both houses of Congress. So who owns this chaos now at the border?
Shannon, nothing has gotten done since President Reagan signed bipartisan immigration reform in 1986. And instead of throwing fingers at each other, why don't we come together on some common principles? We need a safe and secure border, and we need an orderly and humane process. That means Congress needs to act. We need to provide the money to have judges there and to have immigration officers so that we can actually be quickly processing the claims. The president is saying that these claims should be processed in hours. People who aren't legitimate should be sent back. We need to have more money for Border Patrol, which, by the way, the House has passed under Democratic leadership 2 years ago. The Republicans didn't vote for that. But why not come up with a bipartisan solution? That's what I want.
Well,
he didn't answer the question. The question was, who owns this mess right now? So I'll give you the answer. Currently, this is Kamala Harris's mess, because Kamala Harris is in charge of immigration and the border. That was assigned to her as vice president. We've covered this a number of times before, where when it came to the border issue and it came to immigration and she had interviews, she really didn't know how to get a handle on that question. And here's how you get a handle on that question. You have to start asking, why are people coming here in droves in the first damn place? And here's the response that she should give, but she won't. And mainstream media, if she did say it, they would not air it. The reason is because those people are fleeing countries that have been destroyed, that have been bombed, that have been pillaged, that have had resources stolen from them, that have had groups rise up in those countries with arms that they were given by the American government. So it has become unlivable for those people in those countries. That is why they are coming here. No one would risk their life to leave their home on a treacherous journey to come to the United States unless there was no hope left. That's why. That includes Mexico. That includes people coming from countries in Central America as well. That includes people coming from places like Nicaragua. You have to understand, these countries have been destroyed. And mainly because of the US government. We had a hand in it somewhere. If it wasn't us implementing sanctions on those countries, it was us bombing those countries. It was the US government giving weapons to rogue militant groups in those countries. That's why. Kamala Harris won't say that. Khanna won't say that. It doesn't fit the State Department narrative.
Is there anything that you could work with Republicans? Because a lot of those things, ramping up immigration personnel, border agents, those kinds of things are included. They say that you got to secure the border before you can do anything else. They have things included in their bill as, E-Verify as well, that all employers would have a database to make sure they're hiring people who are here legally. Are you opposed to that?
Their bill is extreme. Even the Senate won't pass their bill. I mean, their bill takes away funding from any of the NGOs in El Paso. You talk to Veronica Escobar, who represents that area. Why wouldn't we want NGOs giving water to people coming across or helping deal with the situation on the border? Their bill is for a border wall. That is not something Democrats can or will support. But we will support increased funding for Border Patrol. We will support increased funding for immigration judges to quickly process things. We will support better technology and security on the border. So why not come up with a compromise there? And the president, by the way, is doing everything he can to reverse the catch and release. You have border agents now and judges quickly calling people who are coming at the border within hours, and many of the folks who don't have legitimate claims aren't being allowed in.
So just a couple of recent Fox polls on this, on how the president's doing on the issue of immigration. 36% approval, 61% disapproval.
Yikes. These numbers look familiar. I remember seeing numbers sort of similar under Trump's administration. So when it comes to the immigration issue, how much of a difference is it between President Biden and former President Donald Trump? I just told you, kids are still in cages. You have the majority of Americans who took this poll who disapprove of the way that the Biden administration is handling the immigration issue. How is it so much different? How is it so much different? So yes, with Trump, the language, it was covert, right? Overt. With Trump, the language was overt. It was in your face. It was bold. It was out there. With the Biden administration, it's covert, but they're still doing it. We still have the same problems. You mean to tell me in 2023, they still haven't figured out a way to fix the immigration issue? They haven't figured out a way to speed up the process. I find it hard to believe. You talk to people who have lived in this country, who immigrated here. I know people, it took them 10 years. 10 years to become a U.S. citizen. Why does it take so long? It's a mess. But they're not getting to the root cause. And that's what I want to continue to point out. They're not getting to the root cause, which is why are they fleeing those countries?
And how he's treating illegal immigrants who show up. 9% say too tough. 60%, the overwhelming majority in this poll, say not tough enough. So what?
You see this? The majority of Americans are saying he's not tough enough on the immigration issue.
Whatever this administration is doing, voters out there do not think it's effective. They lay this at the president's feet.
They understand that there is the border crisis right now in terms of people not being treated in an orderly, safe, and humane process. But the problem is often with Congress. I mean, we have not provided the administration with the resources for the immigration judges or processing. We have not provided the resources for Border Patrol. We have not provided the resources for securing the border. And I don't believe this is either a Democratic or Republican issue. It's a both-party issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, President Reagan is the last president who's gotten this done. And since then, we've had no bipartisan agreement. So the question I have for Representative Donaldson or others is, do you want to just score political points, or do you want to actually work, compromise, and get something done? Well, I want to get something done.
Listen to the two of you. It sounds like there are some nuggets there that you do agree on, and so we wish you luck on doing that. In the meantime, there were a number of GOP senators who went to the border. They're back here in D.C. talking about the issue of the fentanyl crisis. Here's what they had to say.
Joe Biden doesn't give a damn about Americans. And why would I say that? 70,000 Americans died of fentanyl overdose. Why? Joe Biden doesn't care. He has a completely open border. President Biden could use this health crisis of fentanyl poisoning to implement Title 42. He could do that today.
I believe it's GOP Senator Bill Hagerty who's got a proposal legislatively to give the power to the president to do this, to trigger Title 42 with fentanyl as the health crisis. Would you support that?
Shannon, first of all, the exact problem with politics is what Senator Scott said. I mean,
that's a yes or no question. And I want to point out something else as well, because he's about to give word salad. But you notice how certain drugs in this country, it's considered to be a crisis depending on who it impacts the most, right? So for example, the crack epidemic that happened in the 80s was not referred to as a crisis because that mainly targeted Black communities, low-income Black communities. But then you had the opioid crisis. You have the fentanyl crisis. These are crises because they more often impact white suburbia or white rural communities. And this is something that we really need to pay attention to. How things are worded, how they're framed. Why was it not a crisis when crack infested Black communities in the 80s? Why was that not a crisis? The response was, especially from the Reagan administration, was just say no, right? Was that Bush? Reagan or Bush? One of them. Just say no. That was Barbara Bush, I think. Just say no. Reagan's response was lock them up. Then you have Clinton, who comes in after Bush, and he co-writes the crime bill with Joe Biden. Again, lock them up. Where was the call for rehabilitation then? Where was the call for let's get them some help? This is a crisis that's affecting Black communities. Let's get them some help. There was no call for it. The call was to lock them up. So pay attention to that. Now all of a sudden it's a crisis.
Come on, President Biden doesn't give a damn about Americans. Here's someone who has dedicated his entire life to public service. I would never say that about President Trump. I would not say that he doesn't care about Americans. So why don't we actually deal with the issues instead of these ad hominem attacks on our president? Of course I would support stronger policy to get fentanyl out of America. I'm concerned about China that's been shipping it. It's wrong. I've heard the testimony in Congress of mothers who've lost their children. And let's solve that. I mean, instead of launching ad hominem attacks at the president.
Okay.
Let's respond to this here. Sabby, you're absolutely incorrect. These folks are being put up in hotels on my dollar. I made one child to raise and I need my money. These folks will own a house before me and I'm an American. I don't remember saying that was not happening. I talked about why they're fleeing their country. Moving on.
Let's do a little bit of a lightning round to get to a couple of other things. The debt ceiling. There is a call by the White House for a clean debt ceiling. There are enough senators, Republicans, who say that's not going to happen. They won't vote for a clean debt ceiling. It's filibuster proof there. The Federalist, though, is summing up the idea that you can't use the debt ceiling as a negotiating tack this way. That says if the debt ceiling is mechanically lifted without any debate over spending, then it doesn't really exist. If you want to spend without any limit, just say so. What do you say?
We say that we should pay our bills, but we are open and believe there need to be cuts in the deficit. And here's how Democrats would do it.
Now, let me explain to you why Khanna is full of it here. When I interviewed Fadil Kaboub, he made it very clear to me that there were certain politicians in D.C. who were very much aware of modern monetary theory. And I asked him who. And one of the politicians that he named was Khanna. So Khanna knows about MMT. Khanna knows that according to MMT, there is no debt ceiling. So Khanna knows that, but he will never mention it. You never hear him even talk about it. Not once. So this back and forth theater that you see with the Republicans and with the Democrats, and they're complaining and arguing over debt ceiling. What debt ceiling? He knows this. Won't talk about it. This is why you have to call this out. Let's go on.
Would increase taxes on the wealthy. We would make sure that billionaires had to pay at least a 25% minimum tax. We would make sure that there were strategic cuts in defense spending. We would end the cap on Social Security and have taxes and have taxes over $250,000 on Social Security. We have a proposal. We just want to first pay our bills before implementing our proposal.
Okay, let me touch on this as well, because you also sit on oversight committee. The bank transactions that were outlined by Republicans this week, raising questions about Hunter Biden, what work he was doing, and why people, as you heard Congressman Donald say, like grandchildren, were getting paid. More questions and answers for a lot of folks right now. But here's something else that Congressman Donald said this week.
So they're getting into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's financial dealings. And I want you to hear how Ro Khanna responds to this.
Whenever there was like this many companies just laying all over the place, and you see wire transfers and cashier checks over here going to random members of the family for no apparent purpose, at the size and velocity at which all of this was being conducted, the only logical conclusion of a financial professional is you are concealing money.
Do you have any curiosity, any questions about those transactions?
Well, Steve Doocy from Fox himself asked, he said, there's no evidence of anything illegal and there's no evidence of anything that ties it to President Biden. I wish the House...
Pause. Okay. Ro Khanna is saying there's no evidence that anything was done wrong. If there were no evidence, do you think they would have come forward with documentation saying, we looked at the documents, we looked at the paperwork? I played the presentation that one of the gentlemen gave about all the different fake companies that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden supposedly had set up that don't even exist. If there was no evidence, how would they know that? How would they have those names? So this is Joe Biden. See, he's trying to, Ro Khanna is trying to protect Joe Biden here, and I'm going to tell you why. Ro Khanna is gunning for the White House. Not 2024, but don't be surprised if you see him run in 2028. There's a reason why he's the one that's doing all these interviews. It's him and mainly Pramila Jayapal. Now, why do they keep bringing on the same people? Because they have political ambitions. Because they want to grow their political portfolio. That is why they continue to bring these two on as often as possible. Now, why is Ro Khanna sitting here answering questions about Joe Biden and his family's financial dealings instead of them actually talking to Joe Biden? Someone brought this question up. Stephanie, why is Ro Khanna acting as Biden's spokesperson? You want to know why? Because they don't want Joe Biden to do any interviews. Why don't they want Joe Biden to do any interviews? Because Joe Biden has been experiencing cognitive decline, and it has been getting increasingly worse over the past couple of months. And you've noticed it. You've noticed it in press conferences. So you have Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal to basically be the spokespeople for Joe Biden. Anything to prevent Joe Biden from making more appearances. They're trying to keep him quiet. But these people have political career ambitions. Pramila Jayapal, remember, she had wanted to be minority speaker of the House. Ro Khanna wants to run for the White House. He don't even have to tell me. I see right through this. I interviewed him and I saw right through it. He's a good bullshitter. He really is. If you don't do your research, it's easy to sit here and believe what he's saying. So he has all the making of being a U.S. president. But that's why he is here. And he's not going to speak harshly about Joe Biden until he will in a minute. But even that one isn't as harsh as it should be. But he knows how to toe the line just enough to appear to be progressive, but still maintain that DNC establishment persona.
Oversight Committee would spend more time worrying about the ordinary income of Americans going up than they are worried about the income of Hunter Biden.
No question.
You should spend more time worrying about the income of working class Americans, just close your eyes and don't pay attention to what's happening with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Yes. Do I think that we need to talk about how working class Americans are struggling in this country? Absolutely. We talk about it on here weekly. We talk about it. But does that mean that you should turn a blind eye to what's happening with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and their financial dealings? No, it does not. Khanna just doesn't want you to focus on it. He doesn't want them to find something because that's bad for the Democratic Party. And that's what this is all about. He comes to run cover for Joe Biden. When you run cover for Joe Biden, you are protecting the Democratic Party. And that's what this is.
I guess I do have, but here's my point. There is a U.S. attorney that President Trump appointed that is charged to look into all of this. And I have confidence in him. When he comes out with something, I'm not going to question it. But why are we wasting our time politicizing this in Congress? Let him do his job. He's a Trump appointee. He has full authority. He can look into all of this. I'm not going to question the facts. Let him do it, and then let's agree to his process.
Yeah,
you are wasting your time talking about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's financial dealings. It's a waste of time, people. We shouldn't talk about the president or his son and all these other politicians being corrupt. We shouldn't talk about their corruption. That's a waste of time. Don't focus on that. That's what he's saying.
Wait on that. Before you go quickly, I want to ask you, you're in New Hampshire. There is a debate about whether President Biden's going to spend much time there because there's this fight over the primary calendar and whether it's going to count and what order. You're worried that he may overlook New Hampshire.
He should be here. He would win this state decisively in the primary. But look, people are going to be here for a year in 2023.
So Khanna goes on to say that Joe Biden should be there in New Hampshire. I agree. He should be there. You don't just ignore the state because you're just like, I got this in the bag. The DNC has my back. The Democratic Party has my back. We already changed the state so that South Carolina can go first so that I can for sure win and have a lot of momentum in this race. I don't need to go to New Hampshire and pay those people any attention. But I have a question. While they're sitting here discussing why isn't Joe Biden in New Hampshire, should he be in New Hampshire? Why isn't Joe Biden in East Palestine, Ohio? Why hasn't Joe Biden gone to East Palestine, Ohio to visit the people who've been poisoned? Why? The people who were poisoned by Norfolk Southern? The president hasn't even been there. Aaron Brockovich has been there. Tulsi Gabbard's been there. She's not even a politician anymore. Everybody's been there. But the president. Why aren't they asking that question? You see how the focus is just so misguided. It's so misguided. That's what you should ask. This is Fox News. You really could have pushed him with that one. All you had to say. Why hasn't Joe Biden been to East Palestine, Ohio? Do you think that he should go there? Let's go on. Listen here.
Trump, DeSantis, Pence, it would be a mistake for us not to make our case. We've got to be in New Hampshire talking about what this president has done in North Country, in towns like Berlin, where he's helping revitalize those small rural towns, factory towns. The president should come. He should come and give a speech about his agenda.
All right, Congressman Khanna, always great to see you. Thanks for dropping in today.
Thank you.
So here's the thing, people. He believes that I think the president can win New Hampshire. I wouldn't be too sure about that. New Hampshire is a different kind of place. Their motto is live free or die. That's my neighbor to the north. And I'm here to tell you, Joe Biden can try to sleep on New Hampshire if he wants to. Go ahead and do that. People in New Hampshire might surprise you. Some of them may be more liking towards RFK Jr. because of his takes about the pandemic and the jab. Again, the motto is live free or die. They really don't like having a lot of restrictions put upon them in New Hampshire. It's different. So keep thinking that he'll just, oh yeah, I think he can win it. That's not what I've heard from people who live in New Hampshire. Keep thinking that. Keep thinking it. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Lawrence said it could be neither. A deposition in a civil suit is to gather info. It doesn't implicate wrongdoing. And I love that you're thinking outside the box there, Lawrence. See, this is what happens when we think critically. Manu Mus, RFK will win New Hampshire hands down. See, New Hampshire, there, like I told you, the way that they handled the pandemic was different from the way that Massachusetts did. So just keep in mind. And thank you for the super chat, Roger. Joe literally said he has no sympathy for Mills. There you go. I can see that as well. I'm just here to tell you the Biden administration should not sleep on New Hampshire and just think like, oh, yeah, we just got this in the bag. Keep thinking whatever you want to. Don't show up there. They'll let you know with the votes. Let you know with the votes. Steven says, remember to lead every interview with Roe. How many more Americans died of preventable health problems today? That's a good one. That's a good one. Whoever says, and by that, I mean Trump is going to win by that much. I'm telling you. I don't know. I think some people are going to be surprised. Like I said, they can go either way, like in New Hampshire. Nolan says, for crying out loud, there are other options besides Democrats or Republicans. This is true. And that is a perfect time for me to go to the next story. Thank you for the super sticker, James. And I think I got a super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. New Hampshire is an indie state. That's why, Sab. Indies think. Think it up here. Got to use that brain. Okay. Speaking of New Hampshire and people using their brain, there was an interview with Russell Brand and RFK Jr. And we've been talking about his race for quite a bit. And there were a couple of questions that you guys had in reference to what will he do. So I'm going to talk about this clip from Russell Brand first. And then we're going to go into another clip that was sent to me today by you guys where he answers another question. And you may not like the answer to this question, but at least you'll get your answers. So Russell Brand interviewed RFK Jr. And I thought this was a really good interview. Now, if you want to see the full interview, I recommend watching it on Rumble. The clip that you see on YouTube is not the full clip. They put part of it on YouTube, the full interviews on Rumble, also because of some of the things that they did discuss to be on the safe side. But, Russell Brand comes right out of the gate with important questions that I think a lot of us have had in reference to how they will treat RFK Jr. running through the Democratic Party, especially considering some of his opinions that he has on his platform and also the fact that he's primary challenging Joe Biden. Like, let's be real. Listen to this first question, because this is pretty revealing, I think.
Why do you think that Joe Biden is unwilling to engage in debate, even though he is not required to for this part of the political process? Why is he unwilling, Robert?
I assume they made a calculation that the debate is not going to be helpful to the president, and that he is a strong enough position now politically that he's strong enough in the polls that he can win. And, the way that the setup of the Democratic Party at the convention, the way the nomination happens, the super delegates are very, very influential, and he'll get 100% of those. So
pause that part right there. Let's go back a little bit. Again, they're talking about the debates.
Biden is unwilling to engage in debate, even though he is not required to for this part of the political process. Why is he unwilling, Robert?
I assume they made a calculation that the debate is not going to be helpful to the president, and that he is a strong enough position now politically that he's strong enough in the polls that he can win. And, the way that the setup of the Democratic Party.
So that piece right there, RFK Jr. says that Joe Biden probably knows that the debates are not going to be helpful for him. That's true. Could you imagine him having to go through multiple rounds of debates right now? This isn't 2020. He has declined much since then. So that is true. It would not be helpful to Joe Biden. But just because it would not be helpful to Joe Biden, that doesn't mean he shouldn't do it. But that's the DNC for you. They're going to find a way to make things work in Joe Biden's favor. Look at this poll. 79% of Biden voters want president to face debate in 2024. 79% people. But the DNC ignores what we want, and they focus on what's best for the Democratic Party. This piece right here from RFK coming up is very telling about what he thinks about this actual race. Listen.
At the convention, the way the nomination happens, the super delegates are very, very influential, and he'll get 100% of those. So
that part right there. The super delegates are very influential, and Joe Biden will get 100% of those. Now, I'm going to disagree with him just a little bit here. I don't think Joe Biden will get 100%. They got to make it look a little bit legit, right? So I think, they might give some a little bit RFK's way and maybe a little bit Marianne Williamson's way to make it look fair, make it look like this is real. But ultimately, Joe Biden will get the majority of support from the super delegates. It's not about what the American people want. It's not about what the voters want. That's not how a Democratic primary works, unfortunately. We learned this with Bernie Sanders, yes. But this is RFK Jr. admitting to you that he already knows that it's rigged. Everyone put on your alert button. Send the balloons, not the balloons. Send the rockets out. Make a loud clapping noise, whatever you would do at this point in time for shock value. He is letting you know that he already knows that it's rigged. So for some of you that had that question, does he think that they're going to be fair? No, he's telling you he knows. So RFK Jr. is telling you he knows that he's not going to win the super delegates, guys. So if you know you're not going to win the super delegates, then you know you're not going to win the primary. Now, why is that important? Hold on to that piece. Because when we get to the next clip, there's something that he says in that interview that contradicts what he's saying right now. And that's important for people to see. Swirling says, why is he running then? Exactly. He knows. Let's go on.
I think he's confident at this point, or his handlers are confident, that he can win the nomination without debating me, and that the debate can do nothing except for put him in jeopardy. So I assume that's it, although I'm not really I can't really look into his head.
He can win the nomination without the debate. He already telling you that Joe Biden can win the nomination without the debate. A lot of people saw this video. This is Russell Brand's channel. It gets hundreds of thousands of views. So it's really important for the American people to hear this. So yes, we say force the debate. They should have the opportunity to debate. They should. But ultimately, that's not the deciding factor. The deciding factor is the super delegates in a primary. That's what matters. Paula, then why RFK Jr. even running? I know more people are going to come with these questions. Let's go on. There's more.
Given that you yourself are part of the most famous political dynasty in American politics, my assumption is you understand the nature of the relationships between the deep state and the temporal administrations that occupy power in American politics, the significant influence that donations have on policy, the insidious nature of the industry of lobbying, and of course, even the potential consequences of being outspoken. My assumption, Robert, is that you must appreciate that if you are going to stand for candidacy of the Democrat Party, that you are going to be subject to an onslaught of smears and attacks because you are speaking out against the interests of, as far as I can understand, the most powerful elite establishment interests that there are. How are you prepared for that? How do you envisage that you will get your message across, and what kind of attacks do you imagine might take place? And don't get frightened.
Very good question there from Russell Brand. And I say this because, first and foremost, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. But I say this because, yeah, like, are you frightened? You know they're going to try to fix it so that you don't gain any traction. Russell Brand is very well aware of that. And how do you get your message out? If the DNC won't let you have debates, how are you going to get your message out? Someone told me the other day, they were like, nobody's challenging Joe Biden. I was like, he has 2 challengers. People don't know. The American people don't know. Not everybody's in this space. Not everyone is watching independent media. Not everyone actually watches mainstream media. They have no idea. Walk down the street and ask the average person if they know who's challenging Joe Biden. Ask them. Most people have no idea. None. So if you're not having the debates, how are you going to get your message out? Well, one way is these interviews, right? Like doing these interviews. But again, you need to do some with mainstream media. Some of them have. He has done a few on mainstream media. So is Marianne Williamson. But mainstream media is not being fair to them. And even though they've done interviews on mainstream media, again, ask the average American walking down the street who was challenging Joe Biden, and most of them don't know. Most of them do not know. So that is a hurdle. That's a problem that both of them are going to face. Now let's go on. Listen to how he answers this.
I'm already under a kind of an onslaught of attack, and I have been for many years. I don't mind the attacks. The censorship is frustrating because you can't really reply or respond to the attacks. But we've developed over the past 3 years during the pandemic a number of ways of talking to people that can end run essentially the mainstream media. So I'm going to take a beating in the mainstream media, but I think through podcasts like this and other ones, I think the nature of media is changing. And
okay, so he acknowledges that he's going to take some type of a beating in mainstream media. This is something I think I wish that Bernie Sanders would have admitted. The media was really nasty to Bernie Sanders. They treated him like crap when he went onto The View, CNN, all these networks. They were so nasty towards him. And it was like he would not say this, what RFK Jr. just said, right? So I think it's good that he's acknowledging, he's letting you know that he knows mainstream media is not going to be fair to him, right? Marianne is doing this too. By the way, she's done so. I know on Twitter, she's called them out a couple of times for not even mentioning that she was running. But the game is rigged. Watch the interview that I just did. I clipped it. Actually, Eric clipped it. There's a clip called the DNC fraud lawsuit lawyers speak out. It's one of my recent clips. Watch that interview. I interviewed the Becks. They were the lawyers that were part of the DNC fraud lawsuit. And they broke it down. They told you, like, look, this is what we found out. This is how it works. This is all, it's all rigged. It's a scam. It's a scam to get money from people. It's a joke.
We've also developed a lot of techniques for working around the media. Even Twitter allows us to talk to a larger audience than any CNN show has. And, so, it's going to be interesting. I expect attacks. If you ask personally how I deal with it, I feel like I have to stay in kind of a spiritual place and that everything I do has to come from that place. And if I do that, if I manage to be able to maintain that connection, that, everything durable or enduring or important I do will come from that place. And
this is something I feel like Chris Hedges and Cornel West speak to this as well, because they talk about like their faith, like this is not a secret thing with them, but they've talked about their faith before, and it kind of guides them in a way as to how they approach certain issues and how they react to things, right? I think if you are one of those people where you are religious, one thing I will say is that you have that to kind of look towards, in a sense that when things are not going well, maybe your religion tells you to have faith and things will work out in your favor. So I know, again, Cornel West has been on. He's talked about that. He's talked about his faith, and Chris Hedges has talked about that as well. So I think people that tend to have that type of faith, they tend to rely on that and not so much the naysayers. So I'm telling you this so that you can see this the way that he sees it. So even if I say to him, okay, Bobby, the DNC is cheating you, right? They're doing da-da-da. Like, he'll see and hear all that. But at the end of the day, his faith is probably going to tell him, well, you just got to have faith.
And I'm kind of invulnerable there. And the only thing that is going to hurt me is if I leave that place and start doing things that are self-interested and self-serving and et cetera.
See, you heard that part? If he leaves that place, if he leaves like his faith and starts focusing on things that are self-serving and like self-interest. Remember, he's like an environmental lawyer. So he's spent like his whole career basically trying to help people. And so that's how some people look at it. Not everybody is religious, but some people are, and they do feel like they can point to their faith as a way to give them a shining light, so to speak, in a time when there's despair. It gives them some type of hope.
And right, I knew it. There is a relationship between a deep spiritual connection and feeling safe in this world. Myself, if I may call you Bobby, I vacillate between service and knowing that there are greater ideals that we must appeal to, that there is real hope for the world, and then sometimes sort of collapsing like a souffle made of vanity into...
What? Oh my God. None of your business. Did God tell Cornel to vote for Biden? None of your business. How could you say that? Oh my God, we got comedians in the chat. Yikes.
The sort of self-centeredness and ego and my own wants. What practices do you have to sustain that? And also for you, I feel like that you must have been exposed across your lifetime through your family history, through the access that you have to the real potency of the threat that you face. I get frightened because I know, like, that if you speak out, you'll be attacked by the media. Who knows how far those kind of attacks could go, what consequences. Sometimes that gets me, and it really tests my faith. It tests my spirit. So I'm heartened to hear you say that, but also astonished that it is effective when you know what the consequences of speaking out against entrenched power could be.
What is happening here? Roger, thanks for the super chat. His faith is telling him to run in a corrupt party. Roger, you guys are so... Oh my God. Oh my God. You guys are bad tonight.
Well, you know what, Russell, I look back and say, I was raised in this kind of milieu where we were constantly talking about my father was a military historian. He would come home every night and tell us about the battles that changed history. My grandmother, my father, took us on tours, and my Uncle Teddy, after they died, took us on tours of all the Civil War battlefields. We grew up touring the Revolutionary War battlefields and walking the Freedom Trail in Boston and, memorizing poems about Paul Revere and all of the kind of, heroic Victorian ballads, from Rudyard Kipling and Alfred Lord Tennyson and all of those. And we recognized that there was a generation of Americans in 1776 who put their lives on the line, who put their property, who put their reputations on the line, their fortunes, in order to give us the constitutional rights that we have today. And they all said if the subsequent generations weren't willing to make similar sacrifices, that those generations would lose those constitutional rights. And I watched during the pandemic, really in shock, all of the Bill of Rights, with the exception of the Second Amendment, being assaulted. I saw first they came after freedom of speech and freedom of expression. They began censoring me openly, and many, many other people, just doctors.
I don't think we're going to be able to stay on YouTube for very much longer because I just feel like you're.
And I have to pause it there. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. There might be one more question because I can't go past a certain time.
Your tendency is towards free speech and potentially antithetical to the WHO guidelines. So I'm going to say, let's move over onto Rumble now, because before we go, this is the question that I want you to answer. Look, you've already said that you feel that the CIA murdered your uncle John F. Kennedy. If you, some of us feel like, well, was JFK the hero that we believe him to be in the culture, or was he part of the system? How can anybody get into the position of the president without being co-opted by the very forces you describe, the malign intentions that you have outlined in your previous answer? How can you get into that position? And if indeed you maintain that, your father, and of course I expect that you will claim that your father and your uncle were legitimate, virtuous, flawed, but good, principled men, then you must presumably believe that the reason that they lost their lives is connected to those values and principles. And it's simply not possible for you to answer that question on YouTube. I also recognize that you are going after, as far as I can see, the most significant opponents of freedom: the military-industrial complex, the big pharmaceutical industry and the incredible power they're able to exert over mainstream politics, and the control over the mainstream media. And I think if you're going to attack those kind of interests, you cannot do it on a WHO-regulated site like YouTube. So click on the link in the description. Join us now on Rumble, where Robert will respond to some of the questions, just some of those questions as well. And if you're watching us on Locals,
he did that part I can play, because some part of that you can discuss on YouTube. There we go.
Sir, and the other ones were people who we knew, who we had known as, whose names he knew as an enlisted man, and who many people respected, but he was skeptical of them from the beginning. And he also was very conscious of Eisenhower 3 days before his inauguration, which I attended as a little boy in Washington. Eisenhower gave what we now should regard as probably the most important speech in American history on January 17th, which was my birthday when I was 6 years old, warning Americans about the emergence of a military-industrial complex that would corrode and devour our democracy from within and without, the institutions of our democracy. It would turn America into an imperium abroad and a security state at home. And I
just wanted you to hear that part. That part is very important. If you never heard that speech that he was referring to from Eisenhower, it should be on YouTube. Eric, if you can find it, let me know. It's Eisenhower's speech about the military-industrial complex and imperialism. That one's a really good one. It's really good, but Eisenhower's prediction was correct. Now, there's one more question that I know a lot of you have been dying to hear in reference to RFK Jr. And hold on to your seats for this one. You're not going to like the response if you have not seen this yet. So someone did send this to me earlier today, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is what we've been wanting to know. He was on Breaking Points. He was in the studio with Crystal and Sagar, and Crystal asked him a question that I think all of you need to hear the answer to. I couldn't find the whole video. I don't think the whole video is posted yet, but they did post this clip from the interview. Listen to this, guys. Hold on to your seats.
And my final question for you is, do you plan to support whoever the Democratic nominee is? And do you have any intention of running third party if you're running the Democratic primary?
I plan on winning the Democratic primaries.
Okay.
So you heard that, right? Let's hear this again, because that's still not the answer that you're waiting for, but this is important.
You plan to support whoever the Democratic nominee is, and do you have any intention of running third party if you're running the Democratic primary?
Do you plan on supporting the Democrat nominee? Do you have any plan of running third party or independent if you do not win? Listen to this.
I plan on winning the Democratic primaries.
Okay.
Now, he just told you that he plans on winning the Democratic primary. But in the Russell Brand interview, he told you that he knows that the superdelegates 100% are going to give it to Joe Biden. So he was acknowledging to you in the Russell Brand interview that he knew that the superdelegates were going to go in Joe Biden's favor. So if you know that the superdelegates are going to go in Joe Biden's favor, then why on Breaking Points are you saying you plan on winning? Because you know you can't without the superdelegates. Did anybody catch that? Thank you, Teresa. But she pushed back. She pushed back. Listen to this. You know what? Like, I was worried when he gave that answer, and I was like, I sincerely hope she pushes again with that, because he didn't really answer the question, and she did. And listen to this.
But
nomination.
They're rigging things. They're not going to allow debates. It's going to make it very difficult for you. So if something happens and you don't succeed, what then?
I do not have a plan B.
No plan B?
No plan B.
And do you plan to endorse, if Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democrat?
We'll get to that part. This part here. What's the backup plan?
If Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democratic
I doubt
nominee?
if I would endorse anybody who's supporting the war.
Oh, hold on. That went that way. Sorry, here we go.
It's going to make it very difficult for you. So if something happens and you don't succeed, what then?
I do not have a plan B.
I do not have a plan B. His words, not mine. So I've been waiting for that question. So now you guys know the answer. Those of you who've been asking me, like, would he go third party or independent? Would he do a dirty break, so to speak, if he doesn't win? And he said he does not have a plan B. Now he goes on to say something else in reference to who he would support. Listen to this.
No plan B?
No plan B.
And do you plan to endorse, if Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democratic
I doubt
nominee?
if I would endorse anybody who's supporting the war.
So he won't support anyone who's supporting the war. So that's a no to Joe Biden, and that's a no to Marianne, unless Marianne changes her position on that. We know Joe Biden would never change his position on that. He's deep in bed with the military-industrial complex, and that's what this war is really about. It's about the money and profit to be made from this war. It's not necessarily about winning. You don't have to win to make money. So that's interesting, because remember when he interviewed with Kim Iverson said, are you going to tell people to vote for Joe Biden if you lose? And he didn't really answer the question. He was like, do you not have faith in my candidacy? She was like, no, I do. I just don't have faith in the Democratic Party. And he didn't really answer it. He was just like, I plan to, win. But now he's telling you, I will not endorse anyone who supports the war. Now she goes on to ask him another question since he said that.
I think that's what my,
So you could endorse Trump then?
I don't see that happening.
You would never endorse President Trump?
I think we have so many differences in style and approach that I probably would never end up there.
All right. Well, sir, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Gotta get out.
So that was interesting. That was interesting. So doesn't want to support anyone who supports the war, but he doesn't have a plan B. So for those of you asking if he would run indie or third party, I think that's your answer there, that he doesn't have a plan B. So don't get mad at me. It's his words, not mine. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. We saw the CIA interfering with the general. Taking such a negative stance for the primary seems more about Bernie scars than good political strategy. It's not even about the strategy at this point. It's about the DNC rigging the primaries, which will happen. Bryce, only state that delegates went hardcore one way was here in Nevada. That's interesting, Bryce. Bad cookies, because if he knows he's going to lose, then this is all just a money-making hustle. Boy for love, he will go third party. He says he has no plan B. Maybe you can convince him to have a plan B, boy for love. Peter, he will do a dirty break. I know it. He will run as an independent when the Dems screw him. Maybe Peter and maybe you guys can get together and convince him, give him a plan B. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. I'd rather put out a strong narrative with a plan for what to do when it happens. FYI, his dad was politically executed. I'm sure he knows it's not fair. Yep, he admitted he knows it's not fair. Thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Is his name R. Bernie K instead of RFK, a shill? Interesting. Thank you for the super chat. Zero Campbell. If RFK Jr. put Tulsi in VP slot, he would be hitting all the notes and showing more legitimacy. That's interesting. That would be an interesting combination. I know he said no, he does not plan to run with Trump or anything like that. I haven't heard about anyone else. Thank you for the super chat, Skeptic. Hey, Sabby, I'm new to your channel. You are really good at what you do. Thanks for all the hard work. Thank you so much and welcome. Thank you for the super chat, Stephen R. If you have a need to give money to RFK, give it to indie media like Sabby Sabs. So much more valuable for the left now. Oh, thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you. I would tell people to give their money to mutual aid. Go to mutualaidhub.org so you can help people that need things like housing and food and all of that jazz. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. Worried your RFK Jr. donation will go to Dems? Donate to his on-the-ground action network, Children's Health Defense, supporting families, uninsured, etc. That's a good point, Zach. Now, yeah, he does have that. So there are other things that you can donate to that'll directly help the people. I did hear about that, the Children's Health Defense. Thank you for that, Zach. Giovanni says, Sabby, you don't need to be religious. You may be spiritual also. That is true. That's a good point. And thank you for Zach. You got a lot to say tonight. Thank you for this super chat as well, Zach. Didn't know he has a support network for people all across the country. That's because left hosts are consumed working out Bernie's psychological damage. I think Jimmy talked about that before RFK ran. He was on Jimmy's show a couple of times. I think he had mentioned that. That probably was where I heard it from. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. His faith is telling him to let the CIA into his family. Roger! Oh my God. You cannot help. First of all, that's an in-law, and you can't help what jobs your family members has. Like, people try to come after me because of jobs my family members have. You know, be careful with that. And thank you for the super chat as well. Faith telling him don't investigate CIA family members. Roger, stop. Oh my God. You guys are crucial tonight. Jesus. Thank you for this super chat as well, Zach. Chomsky advocated starving children. RFK was challenging the very power many of you were cowering under. Why not try to cover what most leftists missed? You think I could do better at that, Zach? Maybe I could. Thank you for the super chat, Ronwell. I was actually considering becoming district level delegate for RFK Jr. He just needs to pull his glove off against Biden, the DNC, and the fraud lawsuit. And thank you for the super chat, Thomas. So no plan B. Is Joe Biden also RFK Jr.'s good friend? He said he's friends with him. I don't know why everybody's friends with Joe. I'll just be honest with you. And thank you for the super chat, Zach. You could take not having a plan B either way. You could, I guess, but you need to have a plan. And thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Did he vote for Biden in last election? I think he did support Biden. If I'm not mistaken, I think he said he did. And thank you for the super chat, Steve. Sabby, why he tell you his plan B now? Of course he has a plan. That's a good point, Steve. We're going to talk about this tonight on Call In. You guys got a lot to say about this. And thank you for the super chat, Lawrence. Sabby, in most states, the election laws prohibit running third party once you have lost a primary, called sore loser law. What about independent, though? Right? Because you can't just, by the way, you can't just up and jump and say, I'm going to run under the Green Party now. Like, I don't think the Green Party just lets anybody run through the Green Party. I think they're more serious about that. That like you need to be a Green Party member and you have to agree to like their platform. I don't think you can just jump in the Green Party and say, okay, I lost, so now I'm going to run through you guys. I think they're a little bit more particular, just keeping it real. But thank you for that. Let's look at that poll. Okie doke. If Elon Musk, is he guilty or is he a target due to the Twitter files? All right, 525 votes. This is close. 28% of you said Elon is guilty. 33% of you said Elon is a target due to Twitter. And 39% of you said not sure. I've never had a poll this close. That is interesting. Well. Yeah, North Star. I think you must be just joining. I just heard RFK Jr. is not going to endorse Biden or Trump. He's not going to endorse anyone, he said, that supports the war in Ukraine. But then he also said he's not going to endorse Trump either because he was asked that question too. Welcome, North Star. Welcome, darling. I don't know why I said it like that. You got that Eisenhower speech? I thought you had it. Oh, I thought I did have it. I'll let you do it. We try to touch the thing at the same time. It does this thing. All right. Yeah, this is the one. This is the Eisenhower speech. Listen to this, guys. Little bit of history for you, honey buns.
From the President's office in the White House in Washington, D.C., we present an address by the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower. The President discusses science and national security, the first in a series of addresses scheduled in the next several weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow citizens, my subject tonight is science in national security. Originally, this talk was to be part of one I intend to make in Oklahoma City next week. However, I found that I could not possibly deal with the subject in just one address. So tonight I shall concentrate on the most immediate aspects of this question of the relationship of science to the defenses of our country. First, let me tell you what I am going to do in this talk and in my next. I am going to lay the facts before you, the rough with the smooth. Some of these security facts are reassuring. Others are not. They are sternly demanding. Some require that we resolutely continue lines of action now well begun. Others require new action, and still others, new dimensions of effort. After putting these facts and requirements before you, I shall propose a program of action, a program that will demand the energetic support of not just the government, but every American, if we are to make it successful. First then, some facts about our present security posture. It is one of great strength, but by no means should this assurance satisfy any of us. Our defenses must be adequate, not just today, but tomorrow and in all the years to come, until under the safety.
Oh no. Oh. I don't know if that was, is this one. I'm sorry, guys.
Of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence.
Okay, here we go. Okay, sorry, guys.
On Dwight Eisenhower.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions.
There was a feeling at the time that this must have been written by some speechwriter who just sneaked into the speech.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
3 months ago, we got contacted by a family up in Minnesota saying that we have documents from Malcolm Moose. He was responsible in part for drafting the military-industrial complex speech.
These new papers give us written evidence that this was not just some caprice of Eisenhower's or something by some speechwriter.
You see the evolution of his speech from May 1959 to 1961.
And he wanted to give this speech for a long time, 2 years.
Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea.
There was one person in Dwight Eisenhower's life whom he really confided almost everything to, and that was his brother Milton.
There's one particular document where the speechwriters had already drafted their version of the speech, only to see Milton come along and totally revamp what had already been written.
When Milton Eisenhower was taking notes and writing things on the drafts of these speeches, the speechwriters knew that it wasn't Milton talking, it was Ike.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
He would see magazines with advertisements for some new warplane or some bomb, and he got so angry he'd take the magazine and throw it into the fireplace of the Oval Office because he felt that defense spending should not be something that would be encouraged by companies who are seeking commercial gain.
We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
There is an interesting document. It shows that the farewell speech would be made to Congress. But yet, President Eisenhower decided, no, he was going to address the people.
Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
One test of how well a president speaks is how long the speech lives. Here we are 50 years later, we're still talking about this speech.
Now, on Friday noon, I am to become a private citizen. I am proud to do so. I look forward to it. Thank you, and good night.
One of the things that Eisenhower mentioned in that speech is that he worried about the power of the military defense locking arms with commercial. And that's exactly what happened. If you can find the full written version of that speech, I highly recommend that you read it, because what he predicted would happen with the military industrial complex and imperialism is exactly what happened. All right, we are going to go into call in. Eric, I'm going to take a quick break. I think we have a couple more comments, Eric, that have not been mentioned yet. I think I did Lawrence Johnson's super chat, and then the ones underneath him I didn't get to yet, but I'll be back and we'll do call in.
So you did. All right. Gotcha. All right, here we go. How's everybody doing? I hope well on this fine Tuesday night. So this is where we give our Sabby a little break before we go into call-in. Let me see here. Let me give you that call-in link just to start things off here. So you can hit the call-in link on your browser, and you can look at it on there. You can install the call-in app on your phone and search Sabby Sabs up on the phone and go in that way. Just getting this link in here. There we go. And if you're doing it on the app, yeah, search up Sabby Sabs. Let me see if I can bring up that page on here just to get a head start on what we're talking about on Call-In. Here we go. Yeah, so tonight on Call-In, RFK Jr., no backup plan. You can talk about that, or you can talk about really anything you want, the other topics, or really most anything you want on Call-In. We want to hear from you, and we'll be going into that shortly. But for now, I want to call out a few of these super chats that we had come up on the board. Thanks for this, Roger Meadows, keeping it going. His faith told him to do a show with Sam Cedar. Thanks for that, Roger. Thanks for the super sticker, Space 99 Yak. Appreciate that. And thanks for this super chat, Steve. Sabby, of course, RFK has a plan. He's not an idiot. He's just playing it close to the vest. And yeah, it's a good question as to, what he would do in this case. But I wanted to call out, let's see. There was also, let me see if I can bring that up here. There was, I'll just call it up verbally. There was also a member, a chat from James Stark that said, member for 2 months. And he said, the Kennedy family has always been capitalist. And thanks for that one, James Starks. All right. Now, as for our topics, this is where I go back and look at my notes here. What we've been talking about. We've been talking about the whole immigration thing. We had Khanna on Fox News talking about immigration, and I don't know. It's all really just theater when you have Roe on here and you have the Republicans on here and the Republicans are saying terrible things and Roe says less terrible things, and it's all really down to we have this system that funnels these vast amounts of money upward to this small percentage of people at the top who have it, and everything you see downstream, is downstream from that. Whether you're talking about immigration, whether you're talking about housing, whether you're talking about criminal justice issues, it's all a function of that. And the thing, if people are talking about these things and they're not talking, if they're not connecting it to the money and the corruption, if they're not connecting it to the billionaires and the whole system, then it is theater. It is just a game they play because essentially you're allowed on corporate media to talk about anything except the billionaires and the mega corporations, the people that own everything. And then MMT came up, and people were talking about MMT, and at the baseline level, what I say about MMT is it's a simple, it's simply an explanation of how things really work, how spending really works, and connecting into all the rest of this stuff. The bankers on Wall Street understand MMT. Okay, the military-industrial complex, the defense contractors, they understand MMT. The billionaires understand MMT. And what that means is that they understand that essentially there is a money tree. There is this source of producing dollars that is in the system, that is systemic. Now, no, I mean, people are going to, get on that and say, well, you can't just create money one night. And yeah, I mean, there are limits. You can't just create money. It gets into things like, can the money be absorbed properly in the economy and whatnot? But the real gist of it is there is this direct flow. Congress decides to allocate funds, and those funds go where they're allocated. And so if you take over Congress, if you buy Congress, which the billionaires and the mega corporations have done, then you nicely position yourself under that stream of money, and hence you get even more money and you get more rich. And to me, that's the biggest thing that we should understand about MMT. there was talk about Biden in the debate, or no, there was talk about Biden in these charges, or these potential charges. I guess we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but there's all this dirt and criminology with Hunter, with Ukraine, and I mean, it's hard to know what's going to happen, but I kind of think this stuff has legs where you're getting this far. I mean, a lot of stuff has come out, and if Republicans in Congress push it and it goes to the point of some kind of prosecutor or special prosecutor or something like that, then I tend to think Biden is toast. I mean, I think you would, if it gets pushed and it starts getting hot, I think you would see a Biden resignation. And then it's get ready for President Harris. You ready for President Harris?
Hey, I tried to warn people. She's next in line.
I mean, that's like my prediction.
If imagine Biden wins, and then like he might do that first year, and then after that be like, all right, I'm out.
And I think we got did we get one more in Rockfin? Yeah, I think we did. Let me see if I can bring that up. Yeah. There. It's hard to do this and talk at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And after scroll this a little. Is that working? There it goes.
All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin hemp car. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry. Beware of technological and scientific elite, and most don't know about full spectrum dominance. The number of bases we have in nations we invaded, bloated black budget, SOCOM in 135 nations alone. See Joint Vision 2020 by JCS on .me site. Ooh, I'll have to check that out. Thank you so much for that, Himkar.
Yeah, the scale of things is just hard to wrap your head around. All right, yeah. I'll see you on the call-ins.
All right, guys, we are heading over to call-in. That's right. This is episode 106. RFK Jr., no backup plan. RFK Jr. has now acknowledged that he knows the DNC will most likely rig the primaries, but also that he has no backup plan if he loses. That's a typo there. Jeez. What are your thoughts? We're going to head on over there now. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. If you're new to call in, you can access call in from your computer as well. You don't have to download the app. You can call in from your computer as well. But other than that, guys, I will not be here tomorrow. I'm off on Wednesdays. I will be back on Thursday. We're going to head on over there now so you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.